Welcome to the I2I broadcast. I'm Heike, and today I got Kari Charisma in my interview. We're both in Goa. We're both in Goa, actually, and we both met each other a few weeks ago. And I figured just get her into the broadcast because I think she's a very interesting person. Hi, Kari. How are you? How's been your day?
Hello, love. I'm great, thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me on the show. Super happy to be here.
Coming from a very personal experience of consciousness, and consciousness and geometry are really closely related, and really have to expand your mind through geometry, what can happen to you. And you're the perfect example where I can see these are the things that can happen to you, right? Maybe you can just tell the audience a little bit about your background and how did you end up as consciousness explorer?
Well, I was a normal person. I studied law at university, and then following that, I followed the traditional path of going into work, did a bit of traveling. Actually, I went to work for the Japanese government for some time. And then when I went back to the UK, I started working for a big multinational media agency. So I was living the London life, you know, totally enjoying myself, parties and like great lifestyle, having a wonderful time. But I began to feel like something was missing and there was something that wasn't quite right. And I began struggling a little bit at work, kind of feeling that actually what I was being asked to do wasn't really aligned with my values any longer. A lot of the products and services that we were promoting in my line of work were not necessarily in alignment with what I now find to be my truth. And I started feeling very uneasy. And then that unease turned to panic and chronic anxiety. And eventually the lovely people at my work decided that it was time for me to leave because it was really challenging for me to function anymore in that life. And so they invited me to leave. And so I came to Goa and I trained to be an Ayurvedic therapist. And in the beginning, I didn't really know what I was doing. You know, I genuinely felt like a little bit of a fraud because I didn't really feel like an Ayurvedic therapist and I didn't really know what I was doing. And I was just like, I thought probably I'll go back to London and get another job sometime one day, you know. That never happened. What happened was I eventually went back to London and I started working at a friend's restaurant and I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. You know, I'd gone from having a huge job in a big firm, lots of money, lots of responsibility, to being a waitress in a restaurant. And I'd never felt happier. And I realized that actually it wasn't happiness that I was feeling. It was something else. Yeah. And actually that's something else that I'd begun feeling is what I now recognize to be joy. And joy is the experience of the direct connection with yourself. So the experience of actually knowing yourself. I eventually, after quite a lot of dancing to psychedelic trance music and having various different explosion of consciousness experiences, founded the Magickal Life Academy. So it's the Magickal Life Academy of Transformational Consciousness. And I know you're going to be blessing us with your presence to offer some insight into sacred geometry at some upcoming courses. So yeah, thank you for that. And the Magickal Life Academy, so it's magical, Magickal, which is essentially the term we use for the art of being yourself. So what we're very much interested in is taking time, taking ourselves out of our usual confines, out of our usual environment, giving ourselves the opportunity to stop, pause, take a break from all that stress and noise, and look inside ourselves and ask ourselves who we really are. So we use a wide range of different modalities, so sacred geometry being one of them, to essentially expand our consciousness it's essentially a Tantra school, and lots of people have heard of Tantra, you know, and it's got all of these myths and, you know, like stories about Tantra, isn't it? It's about voodoo, it's about sex, it's about this, it's about that. But actually, my experience with Tantra is that it's essentially the path to enlightenment, if you like, in this lifetime, the path to knowing yourself. It's basically a toolbox, a box of tools to assist you with expanding your consciousness. So meditation, mantra, yoga, ecstatic dance, singing, kirtan.
Also, your logo of the Magickal Life Academy is a dot in a circle. First of all, maybe you can tell me something about why did you choose, and it's your tattoo. Yes, the dot in a circle it's a very, very important symbol. It's a very basic symbol, but it has a lot of truth in there and very profound insights actually into who we are and how we can expand. What does it mean to you?
But yeah, for me, the circle with the dot is essentially unity, oneness. Yeah. And at the Magickal Life Academy, we're very much interested in bringing to light the knowledge that actually we are one being, that we are one humanity. And whilst we're currently vibrating with different frequencies, which offers an illusion of a separation between us, a lot of the work that we do is about dissolving the illusion of separation so that we can come through this equilibrium and back into a place of harmonic resonance, which is our intention with all of our box of tools that we've got. So we can actually see that we are actually one together. And, you know, this knowledge, this unity consciousness has been known by various names through the ages, Christ consciousness, heaven on earth, cosmic consciousness. So the Magickal Life logo, as you can see there, it's not a precise circle. What it is it's kind of looks a bit energetic. I felt at one point like I might have overdone it and it should have just been a normal circle dot. And then somebody brought a film called Arrival to my attention.
Okay.
Have you seen Arrival?
Yes, I see it.
Yeah. So they don't actually use this particular logo in the film. In the film, they have a different logo, which they say is universal language. But in their promotional material for the film, it came to my attention, there is pretty much this exact circle, which my friend who designed it said he did not get it from that. The particular one means universal language.
Yes.
So it's universal language, grounded. The earth is the dot in the middle. I am the dot. I am the drop in the ocean of consciousness.
You've been to one of my workshops and we discussed the dot in the circle thoroughly. I mean, it's one of the most fundamental forms in geometry, and we all know it in a sense. Yeah, we've all been drawing dots in our language. It's kind of like the beginning as well as the end point. But in a sense, a dot is beautifully what you actually say. Even you use different languages. I mean, in geometry, it's kind of a very technical way of translating that language into form, because a dot is one. And that's what it is one. Yes. Yeah, it's zero actually. In terms of mathematics, it's zero. But it's a defined point, yeah, where everything comes together, just as we all come from the same point of reference, which is the singularity of the Big Bang, which is just a dot. So in that sense, we are already within the oneness thing, without saying consciousness right now. But yeah, and then it expands out to create a circle, which is everything else. And so the geometric pattern, yeah, it looks like it's creating these boundaries and these limitations, let's say universal laws inside there or outside here, yeah, in reality. But at the same time, it's actually within a construct that is all just one big, complex or simple, depending on how you see it, architecture that we're part of. Just like, you know, you could say the dot could be you, or you're right, it could be the earth. It doesn't matter. It's in terms of scale, you know, it can be anything. It actually, dot is everywhere and everything, depending on how you see it. Just like you're consisting out of many, many cells. And in that sense, those cells are separate, actually. Yeah, they're separate. But if you're looking at on another perception, you're one. Exactly. Just like when we go outside of the earth and we look at the earth and we see it's actually just one circle. Or if you go further away, it's just one dot. Exactly. Like we already talked about it, and I'm very curious about understanding dimensions, because a lot of people, you know, think, okay, we're in 3D world, but then there's a 4D, there's a 5D, there's a 6D. What does this mean to you? What kind of experience did you have?
Well, I mean, I've had quite an extreme experience with 3D, 4D, 5D, 6D and beyond. So if I was trying to explain to somebody about 3D, what I would explain to them is that, first of all, D is for a dimension, yeah? And a dimension is any kind of set space-time dimension. It's kind of like a room, or it can be anything within which we are going to experience an experience, yeah? So my experience with 3D, it's the world where I went to work, it's the world where my family is, the world where I went to school, the world where my name was Caroline, and, you know, I was working in this media agency. And then as my awareness began to expand, I began to see things which I did not see before. Like, for example, the fact that even though it's printed most places that some things are harmful for you, like tobacco, for example, cigarettes, I was smoking them, even though they were bad for me. And I began to see, that's probably not the best thing to be doing. My consciousness began to expand, my awareness began to expand. Now, my experience with 4D is that essentially it's taking place here, exactly here now. But the journey through 4D is essentially the journey through the expansion of your awareness into an expanded consciousness, yeah, an expanded awareness of the consciousness around you. So you are beginning to become aware of things outside the normal, yeah. So outside of the normally recognized experience. Because if you think about it, a word becomes normal, for example, when it gets in the dictionary. And how it gets in the dictionary is when enough people recognize it as a word for it to be entered into the dictionary, and then it becomes a word. And before that, it's just nonsense, yeah? So all words are made up. All of experience is actually made up. Yeah. It's just in 3D, there's a particularly accepted set of norms and values and rules and laws which people adhere to, and they see as reality and normal. 4D opens you to the sight of the knowledge that actually there's a lot of other things going on also. So 4D is where the unicorns live, and the fairies and the witches and the wizards and the goblins and all of those things that we were told about in the storybooks that you thought somebody had made up, yeah. 4D is where all the old adages become true. 4D is where a lot of the magical creatures reside, and where if you've ever partaken in taking psychedelics, you may very well have journeyed.
All right, maybe I just cut in here, because let's say in terms of it's a technical term, 4D, and I think in geometry you find then the mathematics to it, which in a sense gets closer to the truth than words. Yeah, because we know what a circle is. We don't need to describe it. We can see it. We can agree on that as a certain truth. And so 3D, in a sense, is kind of, a cube or any other 3D shape that has 3 vectors or axes. Now 4D now becomes really interesting, because when you learn in school, 4D is actually time. Yeah, that's what you say, but it's not a dimension, because everything before is dimensions of space, and then all of a sudden fourth is time. See, in geometry, or especially in sacred geometry, we think about that actually the dot and the circle swapping places makes the torus field, which is a 4D shape, because it changes. Yeah, it changes and it evolves from one thing to the other, and it's the energy field that is around you. So I very much resonate with what you're saying. Yeah, when you go into 4D, you start to expand your awareness beyond the 3D, which is also beyond time, in a sense. Yeah, it's beyond what is just you seeing it right here. Also the different scales of what you're actually living in. Being able to zoom out, just like we said, okay, we're here, but when we zoom out, we're actually part of the earth. And then you just shift in perception, and that in a sense is kind of like 4D thinking.
Shift into the torus, yes, that's also the rainbow bridge. So the middle of the torus is basically the rainbow bridge. So 4D is the path to 5D, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So 4D is the path of truth, in my experience. It's the path that leads you towards the truth, okay? So, 5D is something else altogether. So 5D is truth, my experience with truth. So it turns out, in my experience, that a lot of things that are currently experienced by people in 3D are not true. They're stories that people have made up. You know, they're other people's information that have been passed to people, and people who've received it have believed it to be their truth, and it's not. It's somebody else's truth, and that's okay. But when they take it into their own body system, and they believe it, rather than experiencing it for themselves, then it becomes a story. And there's so many stories playing out in 3D, as we transfer or travel through 4D towards 5D, those stories fall away and we begin to see our own truth. And when we get to the gate of 5D, when we get to the boundary of where 4D meets 5D, we have to leave everything we thought we knew. Because to enter 5D, you must completely and utterly stand naked and bare and step forward into the unknown. And you know, like all the mystics, this is the place where the mystics basically always got a bit stuck. Now, thankfully, my experience is that now we have got so much beautiful cosmic light shining down on the situation. So whereas before Tantra and this kind of enlightenment experience, which one receives or one experiences when you enter 5D, was for only the most dedicated disciples or the monks and the nuns that went to spend months and years and decades in caves and starved themselves and things. That was, you had to leave everything behind in that way. Now we don't need to do that. Now you just need to get to the gate and just be ready to essentially completely transform into truth. So let go of all your old stories, let go of all your old baggage, forgive everybody, including yourself, which can quite often be the most challenging one to forgive, and to step forward and to basically just leap into the light of truth. And in 5D, there are no stories. There's just truth, and the truth that I've experienced is that the natural human condition is actually joy. So all of this pain and suffering and disease and despair and trauma and darkness that has been plaguing the human experience for so long falls away in 5D. And what we're left with is beauty and joy and peace, and a system which flows entirely with complete harmonic resonance in the light of the truth that we are one. So we have kindness as common experience. We have compassion, which means to experience somebody else's good fortune as your own. Everybody supports each other because we know that by helping each other, we're helping ourselves. There is no war. There is no cheating. There is no way to lie because we share a common awareness. So we all live together in harmony and we can just enjoy ourselves. And that's my experience with 5D. And that's the vision with which we are moving forward with the Magickal Life Academy, shining light so that those who are ready to join us may not be so alone when they step through the gate. Because we're there on the other side going, hey, we've got cups of tea and really interesting people and lectures and delicious vegan cake.
I think for a lot of people, it's quite hard to grasp the nature of reality, because that's why I really want to talk about the idea of dimensions. And I mean, the whole wave of people like you, especially in Goa or other spiritual hubs, they talk a lot about these things, enlightenment, light workers, next dimension. I mean, these are all words for the mainstream that is quite out there, it's very hard to grasp. And I think so what we're trying to do is like bringing really to the surface a kind of a new science as well that can also prove that these spiritual experiences have their place and it makes sense. And so all of the spiritual talk seems to get a solid foundation, because when it goes to 40, 50, 60, people, they don't know what it means. Because they need to understand that actually the reality that we experience is actually not that solid. And it's not that real and stable and how we perceive it to be. You're actually living in an illusion that works in a very particular way. and it's exchanging from one moment to the next, and the way consciousness works, you're seeing it in a certain way. So 4D is like, yeah, you're within that matrix of changing, of energy change, and I think your work comes in there a lot because you're working with energy. And I also like the fact that you said, yeah, this is the, what did you say, the Torus, it's the rainbow bridge or something. Yeah, it's a very yeah, it's an interesting word, but it definitely I can relate to it as the Kundalini energy in yoga, since I've been doing yoga as well. Yeah, it's the chakra system going through their Kundalini rising. It's actually the Torus field in the geometric sense, in a very mathematical sense, it's that. And then 5D is, in a sense, is another step further. It's actually projecting the next layer of reality, which is kind of like, exactly what you said, you know, letting everything behind that you thought you knew and projecting something that is so amazing and maybe not even possible to make it right now, because we maybe don't have the knowledge to go there, but having that vision, you know, complete crazy amazing vision of a world where maybe we can fly in cars and have anti-gravity devices and stuff like that. So I would like to talk to you about your experience with the other dimensions, because I know that you've had some communications beyond this world. I'd like to, yeah, just like to know how this happened and what kind of information did you receive?
When I was traversing 4D, I began to experience what I experienced at the time as downloads or transmissions or information coming from something that was not me. Yeah. So at the time they were identifying themselves as Syrian High Council or Galactic Federation or yeah, like, you know, various different things like that, which it turns out other people have had those experiences also. And at certain points I had this experience that I was part of a team, like a big team of beings who came to Earth, the renegade system busters. And we came to Earth essentially to break the human program. Not to kill humans, to break the human program which has essentially gone onto destructive mode, you know, like people are killing each other and fracking the Earth, killing Earth. And so we were invited to come here to essentially assist with the facilitation of the transformation of consciousness as every being comes into sight of the truth of what we truly are, which is multidimensional beings. So whilst we are having a human experience in this physical body, beautiful physical body, that this body is not us, yes, this mind is not us, like where there is something else also. And yeah, sure, like it really felt like at the time there was things from outside my own self which were talking to me and assisting me and which were present. Now, as I entered into what humans have labeled 5D awareness, because my experience now is a little different. So as I brought, or we call it grounding, as I grounded into alignment my truth, that actually one is. So whilst I am here now having this conversation with you, and this reality is very real for me, I can go outside and I can walk around and I can interact with people, and people would probably think, oh, she's a lady, she's saying something, she's not a crazy person. Well, I don't know, depending on what I'm saying. At the same time, I can also experience being in different dimensions in different places, but I experience that as my own self now. I don't experience that as something else or another being or another entity. For example, if you ask me a question about something that this body system or this mind has no awareness of in this reality, and I retrieve that information or knowledge and wisdom from elsewhere. So what many humans have labeled the Akashic Library, for example, which is essentially the bank of consciousness, which is all that is, all that ever was, and all that ever will be. I experience that as my knowing, not as something that's come from outside of my system, from a team of helpers on a spaceship, from anything. And whilst I'm aware that those entities are just as real as you or I are here now, I'm also fully aware that you are me and I am you, and we're just ourselves experiencing ourselves in a myriad of different forms. So I'm kind of hesitant to get into conversations about entities outside of my own self. That experience is something which I invited to desist, because I found it very disassociative from the human experience, which I'm currently experiencing here in this reality. So for me, I find it more helpful and beneficial to the common health of the system as a whole for me to experience that knowledge and wisdom as my own knowledge and wisdom. So I don't know if you've heard of Richard Rudd from Gene Keys. He's an amazing being. The Gene Keys thoroughly recommended if people are interested in looking into something. I can't explain to you how fabulous he is. As he says, he'll say something completely out there, something that nobody else has ever said before, or maybe somebody else has said it before. And then instead of ever quoting anybody else or referencing it, as I know scientists love a good reference, the only reference you'll ever get from me is, according to me. The same as Richard Rudd will only ever quote himself, you know. So yeah, sorry, if you wanted aliens and all that kind of thing, that I'm not going down that road.
That's all right. You don't have to go down that road. Definitely not.
Yeah.
I think in general, because I know I've been meeting some people here in Goa that are obviously more open in their awareness to start receiving, and maybe in the Western mind you could say inspirations, you know, like where do inspirations come from? Where do thoughts themselves come from when you never thought something in a certain way? And in a sense, like I experienced that for myself, you know, even when you write down certain things in a diary and then all of a sudden things come out of you. And I feel like that could be in a sense very, very similar to what you experienced, but I think for you that's going in another level, because all these names they all say something to me. Like I've heard about it, I read it in books. I have not had direct experience myself within myself, but I did have some experience on the outside, and I found it very fascinating. And I think for me it really helped a lot understanding geometry and understanding how the construct works, to actually start to opening up the reality to become more magical, which is a really great cue, because this is how the Magickal Life Academy is named though. And that's very different to magic with a GIC. Why is that? Do you want to say something?
Well, magic with a GIC, so magic with a MAGIC, actually, it's very interesting. It comes from mage, which means wise. So actually, magical, like basically the art of finding yourself, and it turns out that you are very wise.
Yeah, see, I have another explanation for magic, because for me the difference between magic with a normal C and magic with a CK is this magic is the magicians on stage, and they make tricks basically, and the magic exactly with the hat. But magic with the CK is true magic, you know, is the true manifestation of something, of your thoughts in life, which, you know, it's becoming more and more popular, the idea of the law of karma, the law of attraction. So I feel like the idea that we can actually create a life that is absolutely fascinating when you're in flow consciousness, in a sense. Things that just happening to you, I found that absolutely fascinating.
Well, my absolute favourite one so far, there's been loads, but my favourite one so far is when I manifested a pair of brand new trainers for myself. So I was at a festival called Sci-Fi in Holland last year, and my trainers, which were Nike Air Pegasus, size 8.5 black, so I danced the sole off my shoes. And I was like, because usually I'm barefoot, but when I'm dancing in the stones all day and night, I really need a pair of trainers. And I was like, oh no, they've broken. What am I going to do? I need some new trainers. So I couldn't dance anymore. So I went to the Soul Tribe gathering area, and I went there, and they had a beautiful tent with a carpeted floor inside. Yeah. And so you had to leave your shoes outside. So I put my trainers in one of those, you know, those cubby holes where you put your shoes, like a box, a wooden box. And I went inside, and I was there all night. And then the next day the festival was ending, and everybody had left apart from the people who were working there and me. And it was lunchtime. I needed to leave the site. So I went to get my shoes. So I go into the cubby hole box to get my shoes, and my shoes have gone. And I was like, oh, what's this? And I pulled out these trainers, and bear in mind, there's nobody else there. There's no other shoes there. And it's in the same hole that my trainers had been in. It was a brand new pair of black Nike Pegasus trainers, size 8.5, in place of my completely broken ones who were there the night before. And they were literally the model that I would have bought when I'd gone and left the festival and gone back to Amsterdam. That would have cost me 90 euros, which I didn't really have so much cash at that time. And they were just there. I mean, you know, like literally there.
I know, it's crazy. I love it when it happens.
Yeah. And then I had a beautiful client who came to see me in Arundel, and then I came down to Palalem and he joined us for the breath work the other morning. And after that, I wanted to give him an example of what can happen. So he gave me some money to pay for the bill for lunch. I made a big show about getting my notes out and putting them all the same way up and like saying thank you to them and folding them and putting them nicely in their dimension inside my money holder. Because I find if you have an orderly money holder, because money is energy, that's all it is. It's a manifestation of energy, physical manifestation. And then I put it in my bag, and I said to him, you know, like we can generally invite energy to flow whenever we need it, because he was saying he was running a bit low on money. And I said, okay, let's see what happens now. So we went to the scooty and we drove back, and when we got out the scooty, my bag wasn't in the you know, the bit where you put the helmet. It wasn't in there. Mine was on the front of the bike. All that was in that bit was just the helmet and something else, like, you know, swimming clothes. So when we arrived at the destination, I opened the boot of the bike to get my swimming clothes out, and then there was something else in there, and he was like, what's that? And I said, oh look, 500 rupee note. 500 rupee note just appeared in the bike, like on the drive home, just as like just confirmation to like literally show him that this is what happens. And I did not put that 500 rupee note there, and neither did he, and he was quite surprised. But I wasn't surprised at all, because I've experienced it over and over again. Yes, we manifest whatever we need, and we literally create our own reality. And when you get into 5D, you are manifesting and creating practically instantaneously, and you need to be actually very careful about what you wish for sometimes. So,
Even here, you need to be careful what you're wishing for, because you're getting that. Definitely. Yeah, because this is how I ended up doing what I'm doing now, because I wanted to do science, spirituality, and art. There you go.
It worked out perfectly, didn't it?
Very perfect. What came first, according to you, mind or matter?
Without the mind, it doesn't matter.
That's a good one. What do you follow more, science or philosophy?
I mean, I'll be honest, neither. I follow my own truth, and then sometimes it comes to my awareness that a philosopher or a scientist agrees with me.
What do you resonate, or what do you like more, geometry or music?
Geometry and music are very similar. Like music it's just geometry you can hear, isn't it? It's like a tangible representation of geometry. I often hear shapes when I listen to music, but I'd have to say probably music.
Is the universe based on chaos or blueprint?
For me, I feel that there was definitely chaos and then the blueprint. But I'll be honest, I don't know, because let's face it, before my mind existed, could be anything, couldn't there? Because without an observer, how can I possibly tell you? It's just the human mind that literally can't cope with the construct, that actually we don't have an answer to that. But for me, I'm okay.
Okay, which shape do you resonate with more, a sphere or a cube?
A sphere, definitely a sphere.
Yes. Yeah. The womb of creation. The feminine. Of course.
We have some upcoming events in Goa, which we're super excited about. If you're going to be around the South Goa or North Goa area, we've got events for breathwork, Tantra, meditation, cacao ceremonies going on. And then next month, we've got a festival starting 25th of November here in Goa. It's going to be a Magickal Life Festival of Light. And it's going to be a 9.3 day festival. Yes, a 9.3 day festival. So there'll be details on that coming soon. And then this morning, I've just had a meeting, which is super exciting. And we're going to be taking a residency at a fantastic South Goa location starting in January, which will allow us to rapidly expand the Magickal Life family and grow our community. So anybody who's interested to join us in any capacity, please get in touch. We'll be delighted to have you. So that's including receivers, which is what we call students, teachers, which we call transmitters or broadcasters, investors. If you'd like to invest, we are ready and open to receive your investments now. Thank you very much. If you want to assist us with catering, or if you want to assist us with PR or with advertising, or whatever capacity you feel to join